to scrap it out for silver. But it won't be easy. A steady westerly blow will see to that as we get underway with round 9. The parachute flare means it's time to line up. And straight on board with Mark Greenaway, A20, 12th in the championship. All on the run-in. As soon as they're in a straight line, the flag will drop. Back with Greenaway. Oh, and there it is. The power goes on, and the 9th round is underway. Well, it's certainly not flat. 15 laps times 3.74 miles. That's 56 miles in total is the target. But they won't all make it, that's for sure. Back on board, this time with Julian Abbott and Russell Turner, number 7, CETA Imaging. Another indication here of exactly what lies ahead. That's the leading group with championship leader Blacker, bottom left, but 2 washes ahead of him. That means he must be at least 3rd. And out on the right now with Dave Wilcock and Kevin Cotton, number 6, Interlink. 6th in the table in this year's championship, 3rd in 95. But again, it's tough going on the outside. Now then, is this the lead? Approaching Mark 1. Yes, Trevor Clark and John Rio, number 21. Mac Tools in front after 2 miles. Julian Abbott around 300 metres behind. Speed around 70 miles an hour. Each wave delivers a spine-jarring judder. There's no respite even in 7th place. Tremendous battering. None here either. The black boat is Martin Rendell, number 10. 2nd to Blacker overall in the table. 2nd here, but this is 1st, and it's a stunning start from the Jersey crew. Trevor Clark and John Rio, at least 100 metres up already. And 2nd isn't Rendell at all, because that's Ian Fautier. There's Rendell, he's 3rd. And Blacker comes in 4th. That's Sterling in 5th. And Bob Hunt, 52. 6 overall. And the first B-class boat. That's a tremendous start for him too. Not quite so good here though for Wilcock. This is somewhere around 9th place. Picking it up a little low as he gets round the mark. Finding the rhythm's the key. Still streaming through behind. C49 is the girls, mixing it with the world champions there, 2 divisions above. Mick Archer, number 90. Also hounded by a C-class boat. Rod Baldwin. Trevor Clark though leads them all. And super skills here from the newcomer. Having to work every second and every foot of the way to stay there though. And the pressure applied is from Fautier, also from Jersey. Back with Wilcock, still threading his way through the pack. Was 7th, this is 5th. Oh, but he's in trouble here. And he's gone. The submerged camera tells the tale. And that's the 2nd time in 3 races for the Reading man. Now then, this is Julian Abbott. He was right behind Wilcock. But in fact, he's dropped back a little bit. The inverted interlink boat comes into view, and Julian Abbott will stop to ensure the crew are okay. Those are the rules. Meanwhile, let's take another look. Well, he was okay there. Just a slight hook to the left, and that's where it went wrong. Lands again. Oh, there's another boat in there. That was the problem, and that's undoubtedly what turned him over. Well, that's the story from the camera underneath. Julian Abbott, meanwhile, continues his part of the rescue. Well, and finally the picture of the crew. Wet, but safe. It really is a bad moment. Anyway, we get back to racing. Lap 3. Trevor Clark still absolutely magnificent. 61.247 miles per hour with 10.25 of the 56 miles completed. But look at this behind. It's Fautier, Rendell and Blacker for 2nd. Fautier skips through, but nothing between the other 2. 1st and 2nd in the championship. All to play for there. All to play for here. And of course, all to lose. Now running behind and up from 8th to 6th goes Mark Greenaway into the same mark in the Mercury powered Tintorera. And that's the battle on his hands with Graham Hastings near side, also Mercury powered. Again, very little in it. And on-board cameras for the first time this year, at last revealing what a tough sport this is. And you've got to remember, this is the flat bit of the course. Moving up with Martin and Kevin Rendell. They were third in the Phantom behind Vautier. There's a wash there when it is still Vautier. So where's Blacker? They were all together half a lap back. Incidentally, the ground speed on the helicopter just touching 80 miles an hour now. Quite remarkable. That's first, that's for sure. Oh, and it's second for Blacker, coming round the mark behind Trevor Clark. He'll settle for second at this point, but I wonder if he'll settle for second for long. 62.603 is another fastest lap. 6 points for second would virtually guarantee Blacker the title for the second time, but doubtful if that's in his equation. He's a fighter to the end, and he'll go after Clark, that's for certain. Moving up with Clark now, no championship points, but what a way to get you first. Both beautifully balanced, natural ability without question, and the confidence to go all the way to the top, surely. But the two leaders some way ahead of third. In fact, there is third, the distinctive Black Phantom of Martin Rendell, about to lap Matt Shepherd, who leads C still. But more importantly to Rendell is the 24 seconds he's behind Blacker. He needs to beat the number 14 to close the gap in the table, so there's plenty for him to do. On board again with Mark Greenaway, number 20, was 5th, then 6th, 5th again, and now 4th. That's the best of season. And there he is, that's the gap. He's under pressure. Paul Davis and Mark Cook, number 40, Watkins and Soule, up from 9th to 5th. What a good lap for them. So once again, Greenaway and Attlee forced to soak up the pressure on a day when I'm sure they'd rather not. But Davis closes in. Helicopter ground speed still almost 80 miles an hour. It's a tough day for everyone. Including Clark and Rio. We're second after holding the lead for 5 laps, remember. We're 20 seconds up on Rendell in third. Sterling now was 4th behind Rendell after Vautier's exit. And as we're told, Greenaway's now 4th, Davis 5th, so unless Rendell or Blacker are out, this must be 6th. Well, or is it? Because that's Clark in front, so either Blacker or Rendell must be out. That's Julian Abbott behind. Well, he's a little bit misted up, so we're not going to learn a lot from that. But we can from this. Blacker's still rolling, so it must be Rendell who's gone, with 4 laps to go. And it is the number 10 off the course, and a day that began with such promise ends with nothing. Oh, what a pity that is. Meanwhile, back at the start-finish line, Clark through, Sterling and Greenaway. This is for 7th, 8th and 9th, and on board with Abbott and 9th. It doesn't get any easier, does it? Clark from first is now 3rd, having once again succumbed to the far greater experience, and it might get worse because Greenaway is in 4th and closing up. Still some 18 seconds to make up though. Even so, very much a best of season for the cheese importer. He's certainly maturing nicely. And well ahead of Paul Davis. Although I suggest the mood above number 40 is a pretty cheerful one. They would have settled for that at the start of play today. On the other hand, nothing less than first is ever good enough for Blacker, and that's where he remains. A steady average of 62 miles an hour, peaking at just over 80, has paid dividends. It's pretty good also for Julian Abbott, if hard. First year as a driver and still happy to learn his trade at his own pace. This is 9th. A chance now to look back at a little incident earlier on. Brian and Pat Bedell, husband and wife, lap 4, 12th position. And a moment coming up when in a flash you meet the reality of OCR. There, just a few inches lower, takes you for a swim. Back with racing now, and still no way past 33 for 49. The girls repeatedly in sight, but never close enough, it would seem. Trevor Clark was 3rd ahead of Mark Greenaway, and that might well be Greenaway's wash on his right. If it is, the Jerseyman's dropped to 4th. Oh, well, it's not. I believe that's Sterling, number 15, Caracal, and in fact it is. Quite incredible. Clark, who was 17 seconds down a lap ago, is up for the challenge. And he passes Ian Stirling to take up his original slot behind Blacker. Well, what a remarkable drive this is. Witness no doubt in Blacker's wing mirrors, and he'd do well to keep his eyes there. Ian Blacker then, down the home straight for the penultimate time, leads the world champion and the national champion by 1 lap plus a bit, and will surely record what will go into the records as probably his best performance ever. But good as it is, it'll be overshadowed by this. Trevor Clark and John Rio, first race, second place. A performance even third place Ian Stirling will applaud, although he won't have given up the chase yet. 3.47 miles to go. And next up should be Graham Hastings. Well, in fact, that's not Graham Hastings, that's Paul Davis. Well, this will be his first points of the season. That's if Graham Hastings didn't sneak through when we weren't looking. Whatever, it's a good feel now in A40. Oh, well, not so good here. That's a bad feeling when you break down this late in the race. Archer falling short of the target on this occasion. But another bullseye for 52. It's the 7th of the year for Bob Hunt. And with Archer out of the way, the Battle of Hastings is over. Graham Hastings is out on his own now. In fact, he must have gone through. So this is 5th, and what a good result that is for him. It's another best. Oh, and a moment here to savour for 2 young men. Trevor Clark and John Rio in second place. That Nick Bosch and Peter Anstis, the 1995 national champions. Well, in fairness to Bosch, this was always going to be the season of experiment with the new Phantom. But to take nothing away from Clark, this is a quality fleet. And he, already so early in his career, is a quality act. And so's this, Ian Blacker and Stuart Porter, flanked by world champion Ian Sanderson and Paul Scott, round the final mark, and after almost an hour and an average speed of just on 60 miles an hour, win the 9th round of the championship. Oh, Sanderson unlaps himself just, and will now have to complete another lap. Well, you do have to wonder about the boy sometimes. But this is Clark and Rio. Their preparation, clinical and execution, and a spectacular second is the reward. So, 9 points for Blacker, with none for either Rendell or Gittings, means the 94 champion is almost home again in 96. Something will have to go dramatically wrong to rob him of his second title. In B, Rob Hunt and Dave Leach. 7 wins for the year. They're already out of sight, but the battle is still on for silver between Nigel Belchamber and Bruce Mortwood. And in C was another formality for Matt Shepherd and James Marshall, but Sharon Attlee and Jackie Porter keep up the pressure on Rod Baldwin and Gloria Stevenson for silver. The gap overall is just 5 points. And a couple of little dramas to round things off. The £200,000 committee boat was sinking. The RNLI were called in to assist. Well, as in race 1, conditions wouldn't be easy. If anything, the prevailing westerlies had picked up. So Officer of the Day Dave Corson took the precaution of shortening the course to ensure the maximum protection. But it would always be a roller coaster of a day for the 30 crews, racing in 2 litre, 1.8 litre and 1.3 litre on the 3-mile circuit. And further proof was provided on board with number 7, Julian Abbott, Sita Imaging, giving a real flavour of how rough it can get in an 18-foot boat at around 70 miles an hour, racing in arguably the toughest offshore powerboat series in the world. And as in Friday's race, there was little to choose between the top 10 on the run into Mark 1. Each driver attempting to establish a rhythm and balance by adjusting the engine trim and filling or emptying the water ballast tank at the front of the boat. In these sort of conditions, that's a fine line. Back on board this time with Mark Greenaway and Stuart Attlee. 4th on Friday, 8th in the championship, 7th here. And once again, it's showing it's the day for a bumpy ride. The end of lap run-in was to prove the most difficult part of the course. Keeping the power on was essential as the boats continually took off in the beam sea. This is rated by the majority of the drivers as the most difficult conditions of all. Back on board with Julian Abbott and Russell Turner, number 7. This time looking back. Well, either way, it's clearly uncomfortable. At the end of lap 1, as in race 1, it was a local crew, Trevor Clark and Jean Rioux, number 21, who got there first. Just ahead of Ian Blacker and a rejuvenated Mark Priestley, number 16. Bob Baker, number 50, was next, with Martin Rendell, number 10, in 5th. But it was not to be so lucky for another local crew, Ian Vautier and Christa Saint-Croix. One rogue too many for them, and their campaign finished here. Both crew, though, subsequently okay. There was some respite on the course. The leg running parallel to the beach offered some relief, if you can call it that, from the continuous pounding. Up front, Clark still led from Blacker, and with this manoeuvre, Rendell, number 10, moved third and kept his dwindling championship dreams alive. In C-Class, Matt Shepherd, 33, was demonstrating just how good a season 96 has been for him. This was almost half a mile ahead of the rest of his pack. Even so, he was soon to be lapped by the overall race leader, Clark, as on Friday was another absolutely stunning performance from the Jersey man. Chased on this occasion by Mark Priestley, demonstrating how essential keeping the foot down is when you're running with the sea in these conditions. This was still 4th for him. And taking another look at that, it's a classic 3-way, up on 1, trip on 2, headlong into 3, and Mark Priestley just able to get the boat up again. It's a situation that faces every driver many times in a season, and they will tell you it's all part of racing. Seconds after this shot, Trevor Clark and Jean Rioux were to encounter a similar wave, but sadly, they weren't so lucky. The end of the next lap was to be the final one. Ian Blacker and Stuart Porter appeared first, confirming they would lift the title for the 2nd time in 3 years. Bob Baker and Kevin Hoare, number 50, had got away from the Rendell brothers to keep their end-of-season podium hopes on course. And the Rendells' 4 points will at least consolidate 2nd to take the pressure off the final races at Southampton. In the circumstances, however, it was of little importance. It was becoming clear the accident involving boat number 21 was serious. The race was stopped, and it was subsequently announced that Trevor Clark had died from his injuries. Welcome to Southampton, England. Highlights from the final round of the British Offshore Circuit Racing Championship coming up. But first, it's time to catch up with one or two of the crews, kicking it off with a couple of guys with a last-ditch mission.
Bob Baker and Kevin Hoare, it's the last OCR race of the season, and you left it late again, Bob?
Well, it's the best way, really, Peter, isn't it?
It's our only way.
Keep them guessing for the year, and well, we'll see what we can turn in with today.
Not looking too bad for you either, is it?
We've got 3 points separating 2nd, 3rd and 4th in A-Class, and those lying 4th and 2nd, all their points gained today will count, and the boat lying 3rd will have to deduct 3 points, given our peculiar scoring system. So it is very, very critical today, and we have the chance now as 2nd or 4th, possibly 5th, who knows.
That means you've got to win then, Kevin.
I think today, only a win will do today.
Bob Hunt, on the other hand, was far from leaving it late. Everything was well tied up before he got here.
It's been quite a hard season. I think it's been a very fair season, and looking forward to starting next season, really. Have a rest through the winter and look forward to next year.
Last season it went to the wire, didn't it? It shanked into the Isle of Wight.
To the wire, yes, and this season we seem to walk away with it, so let's hope our luck can carry on next year.
Success for Hunt then, but a season of mixed fortunes for Rod Baldwin and Gloria Stevenson.
We've had our misfortunes, but we've come through in the end. Matty Shepherd's obviously taken the championship, but with a bit of luck we'll hold on to 2nd today. Could have been better, but could have been worse. So.
On with the racing then, and, as always at the start, words unnecessary. On board with Bob Hunt in the AA Clark sponsored boat, showing conditions could get quite rough. And further evidence if it was necessary from Rob Baldwin. But at the front, it was number 55, the red and white boat on the right, Ian Sanderson, in contention with the Giddings brothers, A38. And that little tete-a-tete was set to go on for a long time. Behind now with Brian Padell and his wife Pat, showing what it's like in the pack. They were in 6th position. The current champion was 3rd. Number 14, Ian Blacker, merely had to finish this race, and that's just what he was doing. Back again with Brian and Pat Padell, and the navigator on the right-hand side there. Needs eyes everywhere to spot oncoming traffic. But this was the lead, and the Giddings brothers, Andy and Graham, A38, getting ahead of Ian Sanderson and Paul Scott after around 6 miles. Back with Bob Hunt in AA Clark. He too was another boat that merely had to finish. And as the race went on, the conditions got worse. The wind was joined by driving rain, and most were driving blind. Kevin Hoare and Bob Baker were doing rather well though, although they weren't leading. This was 3rd, and that might just give them bronze. Meanwhile, Sanderson had got back in front of Giddings again. That one was always going to be the dogfight of the day, and it was turning out that way. The current world champions showing better to the lighter Argo of number 38. Even so, they still had 2nd and 3rd to play for. That's what they were doing. Bob Hunt, though, looking every bit a champion that he has been all the season and comfortably leading in B. 3 classes here. The 1.3, the C class, is the smaller division, and here in the centre, being overtaken by 2 A-class boats, was Matt Shepherd. He led. Sterling was engaged with Greenaway, while Rendell joined in after taking a scenic route. And they were followed in by Dave Wilcock, Interlink Express. Well, Brian and Pat Badell demonstrating that things are never smooth in OCR, and particularly today, just when they thought they were moving out on their own, along came Graham Hastings to give them a spot of bother. Typical OCR racing this, always scraps along the way. Probably what makes it the hottest property in the powerboat market these days. While Martin Rendell and his brother Kevin, trying to make up after their error, had high hopes of finishing 2nd in the championship, but that took a severe jolt. Ian Sterling and Eddie Dickinson, number 15, 5th in the championship. Another good performance here, but always just off the pace, as was Mark Greenaway. But he had a great time in Jersey, remember. On board now with Rob Baldwin and Gloria Stevenson. Oh, and an example there of how tough it could really get. Back up the front, and it was Andy and Graham Giddings who had got away from Ian Sanderson and Paul Scott again. The thing was, now could they finish it off? Well, the gap was clearly 150 metres, and they had every opportunity. A great mark there from Sanderson. As time rolls by, he becomes better and better. Holds the World Championship, remember. But by the halfway point, the conditions got even worse. Visibility was almost nil. There was a chance for us to look again at Rob Baldwin and Gloria Stevens. They were very high there. Rob Baldwin almost leaving the boat, and that is painful. There was a more poignant moment later in the race when the 2 red and white boats met. Nick Barsh far side, Ian Sanderson near side. Sanderson was lapping Barsh, the 7 times champion. Sanderson, the current world champion. Well, conditions got worse and worse, and with 6 laps to go, proceedings were called to a halt, and rightfully so. Well, that left the championship looking like this. Matt Shepherd and James Marshall from Rob Baldwin and Gloria Stevenson, and Sharon Attlee and Jackie Porter in C. In B, it was Dave Hunt from Dave Leach, Nigel Bellchaper and Vincent Rose, and Bruce Mortwood and Ian Attlee in 3rd. And in A, Ian Blacker made it 2 national victories in 3 years, and afterwards spoke to us about the current season.
Ian Blacker, did they quite an easy run for you?
Yeah, we did all the work in Jersey, so today we really only had to cross the start line.
couple of seasons back when you won the national championship, it went to the last race. How much different was this?
Yeah, and this was actually probably as hard, although it seems easier because we'd won it before we actually come to the last race. We are the fastest boat in the rough. We quite easily win when it's rough. We're not. When it's flat, we struggle. We make top 5, but if it's rough, we're by far the quickest boat.
How about next year?
Have to see if it's rough.
Still be running with A-class?
Yeah, we're looking at changing the boat and probably a new engine, but it's still to see what happens in the winter, really.
World Championship?
Yeah, we'd like to do that. We haven't done a World Championship yet, or a European, so obviously that's the next step. We'd like to move on and go for a World or European Championship, but so we're quite happy with the British Championship at the moment, thank you.
One of the more pleasant surprises of Euro Offshore 96 at Quiberon on the French west coast was the weather. Just a short ferry hop and a 2-hour drive from shivering September in Britain, this was a generous 23 degrees Celsius and sunshine all the way. Pretty hot competition too. In the 7 classes raced during the Innovative Festival, only one was definitely decided with 1 round to go.
Hello, Peter. Hello, Mr. Pascoe.
Time now then to catch up with that final action, starting with a look at the scores to date in offshore. And with 400 points for a win in 1.3, any one of 3 could still strike gold, and any one of 8, silver or bronze. Mind you, with the first and the second so far, Cutler and Bellamy always the favourites. The 2 litre, following major surgery from the judges in Heat 1, almost every one of the 18 starters was in for a shout on gold, with Ingvarsson and Anderson and Little and Arthur slightly in front. The 4 litre, Walker and Ward needing a 5th to go with their 2 victories if they were to be new European champions. And it looked easy enough, although Cadaret's improving tournament might cost them final heat victory. And in 6 litre, it was all over. No one could catch the Aurelius brothers in their flying SO Ultron, so no one decided to go out. We did, and this is the best of the action from that final race, kicking off with 1.3 and 2 litre. And the early break in the higher division, not surprisingly, was occupied by Heat 2 winners, Ulrik Ingvarsson and Christian Andersson from Sweden. The radical monohull from Occy Manifeld stable, once again performing perfectly in all sea states. But standard engines ensure the rest are never far behind, and once again much would depend on the reliable navigation between the marks. First heat winners Bertolacci and Fabrizio, reduced to 6th in Heat 2, needed at least top 3 if they were to hold on to a slender 26-point lead. And that was 5th, and definitely not quite good enough. Up front, though, fellow Italians Campolucci and Montovocci in another Argentinian hot boat were doing rather better. They were third, and chasing the Swedes, whose monohull had now been joined by the ultralight catamaran of Jari Saarinen and Jan Marjamäki from Norway. And it turned out to be quite a classic, both still smarting from Heat 1 disqualification, and both in with big title hopes. No question this battle would go all the way to the wire. Just 50 metres astern, Campolucci, without points in Heat 2, was joined by another Norwegian, Atle Staff, whose third in Heat 2 was sufficient evidence to suggest he too might make the podium. In 4 later, Walker and Ward were nowhere as decisive as in Heat 1 or 2. Mind you, they didn't need to be. Fifth remember was good enough. 4 at